Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Katt Williams stirring it up again, which is always fun for this podcast. He was at Vulture Festival, and he started talking about his appearance on Club Shay Shay like 6 months ago and said, I set out to kill the careers of the people I was talking about. But it was so vicious that I erased all the knockout blows and just left the jab so that the comic I'm talking about knows, I know your real story, MFer. I thought I had figured out the algorithm mathematically, and I thought I could show that. When I wrote it out to kill the careers of the people I was talking about, but it was so vicious that I erased the knockout blows. I'll tell this, but you know what else I know. You may recall, during that appearance, Katt mentioned that Diddy would catch hell in 2024 because, quote, all lies will be exposed. Katt Williams perhaps less crazy than one might think. Katt joked, I'm anti-establishment, so I can never be the establishment. Even if I'm at the Diddy party, I'm there to tell. I'm there to see who the F is in here and what do y'all get from being in here, so nobody likes to have me around. I'm there for bad intentions. He also discussed the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. What a waste of time that was. And he said, what a blessing for Mike to be able to, at this point in his life and career, throw 18 punches and get $1 million per punch for a total of $20 million. Let's hit Gossip Corner kind of early today. Cinema Blend is stirring it up. A rumor that Pete Davidson might possibly perhaps host Saturday Night Live, but he's feuding with Colin Jost, according to the rumor mill. The Sun newspaper recently ran a story from the John Mulaney episode that alleged an icy exchange when Pete Davidson returned. Some say Pete and Colin Jost had an awkward moment of shaking hands in the hallways of Studio 8H. Others noticed the distance between the men on stage during the goodbye segment at the end of the episode. Boy, people overanalyze the heck out of that one. Is it even a minute at the end of the show? And it was overanalyzed this week. I'll talk about that in the second half of the pod. One gossip site says there were a rumor a month or so about how Pete Davidson and Colin Jost, they weren't jiving as friends. Well, Pete showed up on SNL. There was a rumor that Pete wanted to come back and host, and Colin wasn't so into the idea, but Mulaney was hosting, and he loves Pete Davidson like he's a big brother who watches out for him. So the source says, I've heard that Pete wants to come back and host, and maybe last week's guest spot was a litmus test to see how he's doing post-rehab, etc. Gossip Corner says Pete's people have pitched him to host the show, and there was not yet a yes or no. They want to see how he's doing. Do you think they could be fighting about the ferry that they bought? Jerry Seinfeld, what are you doing? He apparently was listening to WFAN Sports Radio. Jerry, the 90s are over, dude. Nobody does that anymore. What are you doing? So Jerry's presumably in the car. I hope he's not listening at home. I hope he was at least in the car. And he hears the WFAN Sports Radio hosts mention the Season 8 Seinfeld episode, The Chicken Roasters. One of the hosts says, one of the few good Seinfeld episodes. Jerry was listening and called in. Presumably he has the hotline and says, 1 out of 2 is fine. Look, we made 180 Seinfeld episodes, so we made 3 good ones. We're like the Giants. We're 3 and 177. John Mulaney gave an update on his son Malcolm, saying he's doing good. He likes being a big brother. It's interesting. With our daughter, she's 2 months old and she doesn't do much. And I think the first couple of weeks, he thought she might be a toy because she'd squeak and he'd be like, how do I make it do that again? Now I think he gets it that this is a little girl. Billboard did a lengthy piece with Chris DiStefano. Last week, Chris did 3 back-to-back sets at 3 different locations of the New York Comedy Club, that part of the New York Comedy Festival, this being the only article I've seen so far really about the New York Comedy Festival. Apparently, this was inspired by Taylor Swift. Why, you say? Well, he was recording bits that he had performed previously on Comedy Central and Netflix specials. He wants to have his own version of the shows and release them as Chrissy's version so that he can hand them into, places that play comedy records and get the streaming royalties himself. Interesting. Probably pretty smart. It was my manager's idea. His manager's also the owner of the New York Comedy Club. The manager said, I want to have a headliner come in and do 3 headlining shows and back-to-back-to-back at my club, something different for the New York Comedy Festival. I was like, sure. It was fun. I'm calling each show Chrissy's version because I was doing old jokes that I did on my Comedy Central and Netflix specials because technically they own the audio rights to that stuff. We're going to take a mashup of the 3 shows that I did, 3 hours of material, take the old bits, call it Chrissy's version, and upload them to wherever. Now I'll own them upright. Will there be a video streaming version? Billboard asked. Yes, every Sunday at 7 p.m. For the past, I think it's 10 weeks, I upload that week's material on my YouTube channel, 20 to 30 minutes of my week of stand-up. So this week, which is 2 days ago now, I'm going to put up that material. In his set at the New York Comedy Club, he alluded to Tony Hinchcliffe's Puerto Rican jokes. Chris said, it's one of those things where for me, it's always comedy first. Obviously, I have Puerto Rican family and I watched the video with them. They were like, it's a joke. You can say, is the joke funny or not? Comedy's subjective. I get it. And I understand if you're doing comedy at political rallies, which are non-comedy spaces. You're definitely opening up yourself to more criticism. Comedy is one of those things where it's got to be the right setting, the right ambience. Say, for example, Adrian Appalucci telling Puerto Rican jokes during a Netflix special that was recorded, edited, and published. Nobody freaked out about those jokes. Chris says, I subscribe to comedians that never apologize. The way I look at it, you can't be funny and hateful. Hitler wasn't funny, so if a joke misses, it misses. Don't take one thing someone says and say, this is who this person is. That's not going to get us further as a society. My thing is, you can say whatever you want and cross that line as long as there's an attempt at a joke attached to it. Just don't say a shock value word to say the shock value word. That's being corny. That's not what comedians do. My job is to thread the needle of saying something that crosses the line and possibly offends someone, but offends them and makes them laugh by making a heavier subject more lighthearted. When you come to a comedy show, you have to understand what you're buying a ticket to. There's a lot of times we all swing for the fences and miss. That's part of our job. I'll jump in. I was talking to my college students last Thursday about that and said, I get up here and I lecture to you guys for 2.5 hours, and I've been doing it for over 10 years. You talk long enough, I'm sure I said something stupid at some point in the last 10 years. I'm sure if I go back and read the transcripts of every college lecture, I said something stupid. Did I come in harm? No. Back to DiStefano. The comments about Puerto Rico were one of those things where most of us understood that whether you thought it was funny or not, it was just a joke. It didn't land. He knows that, and it's fine. It didn't have an impact on the election because most adults don't give a hoot about that. Most adults were like, hey, I can't buy gas and groceries, so I'm not going to not vote for whoever I want to vote for because of a joke. That's when you're going to have the celebrities coming out on social media. It might have made a difference 10 years ago, but now nobody cares. As a matter of fact, it looks worse when you have J-Lo or someone who's conservative telling people what to do and who to vote for. It's like, really? You're going to tell me what to do in your $50 million bleeping mansion? I can barely get by here, so shut up. But with my career, I have to be a man of the people. You'll see some comics get humongous, and then they have a comedy special talking about their mansion or their private jet, and it doesn't hit as hard, Howard Stern. I don't know. I just blurted out Howard Stern there. That wasn't Chris. That was me. I don't know why I said that. Because the viewers are like, wait, where's the comedy? I'm listening to what the common man's going through every day. That's why Ricky Gervais is my favorite comedian of all time. Look what he did at the Golden Globes a few years ago. He just destroyed the celebrities there. He said to them straight up, you guys are in no position to lecture the public, so get your little award and F off. Chris, anything else in the works? Chris says he has a Hulu special coming out February 21st. Really? Somebody should publicize that to one of the podcasts that talks about stand-up comedy every day. Hulu publicists, are you listening? Wow, that's pretty interesting. Hulu should probably have one of their publicists reach out to a podcast that talks about stand-up comedy every day. For example, Netflix, they're doing stand-up comedy, and I know about it. Adam Ray, for example, has one out today. This is the one where he's just doing Dr. Phil, I think, for the whole time. Okay, Netflix calls the show one-of-a-kind comedy, featuring celebrity guests, crowd work, and outrageous hijinks. Meanwhile, Max, they have a publicist. Rose Matifeo will have her new comedy special. That one's Thursday, December 19th. Max tells us it's built around a 16,000-word note kept over time in her phone. In it, she offers her candid takes on relationships, from dating in her 20s versus 30s to supporting friends through breakups, and the stark differences between herself and her parents of the same age. She also explores whether she wants children, how aging has impacted her comedy, and her strong feelings about online relationship coaching. You know who else has a special today? Paul Reiser. How do I know that? Publicists. Paul Reiser's is on Comedy Dynamics. It's called Life, Death, and Rice Pudding. Paul Reiser discloses the secret to successful downsizing, explains why the whole do unto others thing doesn't work in marriage, and while boiling pasta naked is never a good idea. Paul spoke to the Independent newspaper and said, I'm not a fan of gossip. I don't like it about other people, and I certainly don't want anything being said about me that I wouldn't want shared. Everywhere in the news it's fighting, but I believe if you put any warring party in a room and ask them what they want, you're going to find out that they're not that different. Someone locked me in a room with a publicist from Hulu. I'm sure we could work this out. We want the same thing, don't we? We want people to know about the Hulu comedy special. All right, I'm going to stop. That bit is now officially over, all right? That is the last time I'll do it. I'm done with it. That's it. You heard me. Let's move on. Did you watch Saturday Night Live? I'm trying not to become the SNL sucks guy on Threads. I've been hanging out on Threads where I'm finding a pretty robust discussion of comedy, and I'll say one thing about SNL, like that episode was horrific. And I'm quickly becoming the SNL is terrible guy. And I don't feel that way at all. I just feel that Bill Burr bombed, and this week's episode was horrific. I didn't even make it through the opening sketch, and I can't tell you the last time that happened. Alec Baldwin came out and did RFK. He's catching some grief from people saying he shouldn't make fun of RFK's voice. Not really good impression. And my question to Lorne Michaels, who, believe me, if we compare, say, Lorne Michaels' career and mine, Lorne, you win in every category. But I don't understand this season why the guest stars. Like, why is Dana Carvey still there doing Joe Biden? And okay, maybe because he's this year's Biden. Okay, fine. I'll let that go. Why is Alec Baldwin doing RFK Jr.? Nobody on the cast can do RFK Jr.? No one? I don't understand why they're not using the cast. It really confuses me. Back to overanalyzing the final minute where everybody stands on the stage and waves. People noticed that Alec Baldwin's fly was open. I also felt James Austin Johnson's Trump has lost its way. When he first started doing it on SNL, it was totally on point. And maybe James' version of the character is better doing the rambling weave speech thing. But when he does Trump in a sketch, it's not flying. I thought the impression had drifted vocally pretty far this week. And, you know, he's sitting there and Alec Baldwin's there, and Alec Baldwin was Trump for a few years. So the whole thing is just kind of weird. I don't know what's going on right now. And Nick Kroll, I thought we knew this already, but this got announced on Monday as if it were news. But I thought we knew this. Nick Kroll will join the rotating cast of All In, a comedy about love. It's a Broadway thing starring John Mulaney. Mulaney will appear in it from December 11th through January 12th. Nick Kroll will join the rotating cast from January 14th through February 2nd alongside Lin-Manuel Miranda, Aidy Bryant, and Jimmy Fallon, which is great because it means we'll have lots of news during what could be a potentially quiet time. I'm always in favor of news during potential quiet times. Other cast members include Fred Armisen, Richard Kind, Chloe Fineman. So yeah, this is going to get a lot of buzz. All In, comedy about love at the Hudson Theater through February 16th. Official opening night, December 22nd. The show, written by Simon Rich, features a series of humorous stories of dating, heartbreak, marriage, and more, adapted from short stories written by Rich that had previously appeared in The New Yorker. And that is your comedy news for today. Hey, I have a Substack. All of a sudden, the Substack over the weekend, I wrote something about Spotify, is getting a ton of subscribers. Link in the show notes, but it's mcdpod.substack.com. Sign up for free. And if you would like this program without commercial interruption, link in the show notes. If you're on Apple Podcasts, click that banner there and it'll tell you how that works. See you tomorrow.